Good morning, Warriors! Back with another episode of Vigor Warriors 2 and the 1% Club. Hope you guys are doing well today. This is, what is today? Today is Tuesday, I believe. I'm sorry, this is Wednesday. Vigor Warrior loses track of time a little bit here. I forgot to do one yesterday, so that's probably what it was. So today is Wednesday, my friends, and hope you guys are doing well. Hope you guys are on your purpose, on your plan, continuing to conquest yourself and other people around you, and continue to build that power that you have, that unbelievable masculinity power within yourself. So some shout outs here before we get to our topic. We're going to talk about an interesting one today. Earth Hanifa and C.S. asking about marriage, celibacy, SR, and just kind of going back to that topic a little bit. So we'll talk about that a little bit. But some shout outs here first. Who do I got here? JDS, a couple of those. JDS, thank you for your comments. Brian Peraz, thank you. Tomislav, Peelzoezoe Rob, thank you. Cologne X Candles, thank you once again. Leon, thank you. Guzmedu, thank you. Blanket Services, Andy, BeJa, BobCool again, thank you. Jay, for your comment. Fullmetal, Thomas Van der Sman, thank you. And G, thank you guys for your comments, and I appreciate those, and we'll continue to kind of shout those out, and I got a bunch of other ones coming, and I have one coming from, I think it's John from the UK. I wanted to do that because he wanted me to give a shout out real fast to him. So thank you, my friend, and we'll give you another shout out a little bit later as well when I get caught up with a list of those. All right, at 2 minutes is our topic. So our topic is marriage, celibacy, semen retention. All right, so we can approach this thing in a lot of different ways, warriors, as we talk about this. But remember, the key to all of this is your goals. What are you trying to accomplish to be the best person you can become and the best person you can become under God? That's the key. So as we look at all these type of things that we're talking about here, always in the background, your relationship with God is the most important. All right. Obviously, we all want to live a fruitful, long, successful life. And those things will come. God promises abundance if we follow God's word. The idea then is to think about, what is it in your purpose? Now, the Bible talks about the fact that marriage is good in a sense, because if you have a lot of lust and you don't want to have multiple partners over the place, that just kind of destroys everything, and you're releasing all the time on top of that. Then you have one partner to spend time with, and hopefully your lust will not be as strong to overtake you. The problem with our energy, and guys, and obviously the longer you're in a streak, you feel it as much and more. Even at my age of 61, going on 62, you feel unbelievable amount of energy. Unbelievable. And the thing is that you have to learn how to control it. I didn't control it for many, many years. And that's when you run into problems, especially when you're younger, you're in the 20s, like I was. It was very difficult, as you guys are finding out now in a lot of your 20s. 20s and early 30s, it's tough. You have an abundance of energy, and that's a great thing. That's a blessing. That's a blessing from God, that you have that amount of energy. Just look at animals and other things. What happens when they are fixed? They become docile, right? They are not strong. And these are things you cannot ever let happen to you. Continue to do what you have to do. And retention is a big part of it. I think there's a society type of message out there that you should be releasing. But all that does is it brings down your energy level. It brings down your energy level, and you're not powerful. And you're not that male. You become a half male in many regards. You're not full strength. And this is tough. This is why you become weak as a male, which is what we're seeing in society. A lot of males out there are weak at all ages because they're releasing too much. They're not controlling that energy and using it for fruitful purposes. As Napoleon Hill said in his famous book, Think and Grow Rich, he's talking about chapter 9, transmuting that energy into something. We talked about that recently. You have to be able to do this. Now, let's talk about a situation when you do have marriage, and I've been married for almost 30 years, around 30 years, something like that. And the idea that you cannot have semen retention while you have a marriage and you can't have celibacy. Well, let us look at what you're doing here. The bottom line is you're talking about what your purpose is. Obviously, if you're married and you're starting off and you're having kids, you're going to go ahead and procreate. And so you're going to release. Whether you have that child on the first try, second try, whatever it might be, you might be releasing for a while until you have a child. That to me is, I have no trouble with that at all from my perspective. I think if you're sitting there trying to have children, this is what God intended to do. Be fruitful and multiply. I believe that this is the case. You're okay. I have no trouble from my perspective, and this is what happened to me. All right? Now, the problem occurs, obviously, when you are in a marriage and you're releasing when it comes to pictures. That's not a good thing, right? And the other idea then, if you're talking about retention, how do you control retention even though you're having a relationship with your wife? And that's a good question. I mean, it's a fair question when it comes to this idea. But we have to remember what the purpose of what you're doing is. And the idea that is you're basically having a woman who is your wife. She is someone that you're protecting and you're providing for and helping. And that kind of situation, you can still have intimacy. Now, you can do lots of different intimacies you're talking about it, whether it's holding hands, whether it's hugging, even kissing, those type of things we're not talking about when it comes to releasing. And you could still have all that. And as time goes on, those type of things are important. Now, what if the female, all right, and we've had this question before, what if the female wants sexual, after all this, after you have kids and all that kind of stuff, and now you're sitting there and saying, okay, what if the female wants to have children? Now, the interesting thing about life, right, is that males have a huge drive. They can have children because of our power, gentlemen. And I'm just talking about the gentlemen here, of course. I'm not trying to offend the young ladies who are in our audience, but I'm talking to gentlemen here. You have the power to have children until you're 95, 100 years old. It doesn't really matter. And this is why it's important for men to realize their value goes higher as time goes on, because they still have the ability to do this no matter what. That's why sometimes you see a guy like Hugh Hefner used to do, or someone like that who's 70 years old having a wife at 20 or something like that. It's because he can still have children at any kind of age, as long as he still has that level of masculinity and he hasn't lost it. But what happens when people go ahead and release and release and release, they don't have that kind of energy at that age. A lot of them have dysfunctions. They need to take medicines, therapy, things like that. So when a female then who is married to you and wants to have children, and that's a wonderful thing, but then after they have children, they still want to have sexual intercourse and relations, well, your other option then is to attempt to try to have relations but not release. Now, of course, when we're talking about monk mode, you're not going to have that kind of monk mode. Monk mode is something that you probably have to kind of wait on, because the idea is obviously you're getting aroused and excited by your wife, so you're going to go ahead and have those type of things, which is why I've had issues, and I'm not going to probably ever be able to work on monk mode for years on end, of course. But the idea then is still, you're talking about releasing, and we're talking about 1,050 days or whatever, 60 days at this point. But it doesn't mean that you still can't have intimacy with your wife. And I think that's the thing when it comes to control warriors. You have that control. Remember, the bottom line is you're trying to keep as much of your nutrients within yourself as possible. So, having celibacy to some level, we call it that type of thing. Now, of course, if you're not married and you are by yourself, well, that's a whole different thing. But we're talking about a marriage because I think that's what C.S. and Level Earth Hanifa was talking about. It is a tricky situation. There is no doubt. But once again, remember the goals. Your goal is to keep as much energy within you as possible. Now, in my case, my wife knows very much about what I'm doing. And I think the idea is that if you have buy-in from your partner, well, that makes things a little bit easier as well. And I think you have to kind of realize that that's a situation to go into. So being upfront, honest, I think is an okay thing. But I think what you have to do is find, once again, if you have somebody who you're with who sees the benefits of what you're doing, and the attraction level that you have when you're on retention is unbelievable. Now, once again, the intimacy level can still be there in many different ways. But you have to kind of think to yourself, okay, what is the final goal here again? I mean, if you want to release with your partner, well, that's your choice. But just remember again, we're talking about a long-term type of idea that you're trying to build a lifestyle of having your nutrients, keeping yourself within yourself so that you can accomplish a lot of goals. And you can live a great, fruitful, abundant life. Right? Doesn't mean you still can't love your wife. It doesn't mean you still can't love that situation you're in. But you also have to release, you also have to understand what you're doing. The worst case scenario, obviously, is having affairs and also releasing there, and also then warriors going out and looking at pictures and doing that, because it becomes a bad habit. And what you have to do is prevent the habit. You know, having intimate time with your wife and a real person is so much more better than sitting there and releasing on pictures all the time, right? That's a much better type of situation to be in with your somebody that you're with. So that's the thing we have to consider here. And so CS and Level Earth Hanifa, it's a great question you're asking, and it's not an easy answer, right? But the answer, obviously, is to be able to still have that intimacy with your wife, be able to procreate when you need to, and having those type of releases when you want to have children, things like that. And then after all that's over with, and your wife can't have children or doesn't want to have children anymore at that point, or it's not good for her, because she could get, they should have medical problems and things at some level, at some age, then you're talking about if you still want to enjoy the intimacy, well, then you have to exert a lot of self-control. And you can still be intimate, but obviously releasing is a big problem. You're not going to be able to do monk mode and release and not release at the same time. You're going to have to pick one or the other in those type of situations. And that's why you oversee me going back and forth in monk mode, because I'm not releasing, but the thoughts are obviously still there. And that's the thing you have to kind of be careful of and see. But it is something to think about. And obviously, if you want to be married and you have that type of situation, then at some level, you have to realize you're going to have to make some sort of decision when it comes to these type of things. And obviously, it's not a problem when you're having children. You're young in a relationship and you're trying to have children. That's one thing. That's great for your wife. And you're transferring your energy to your wife, and that's a wonderful thing too. There's nothing wrong with that. But the idea that you don't want to continue releasing to pictures and affairs and all this other kind of stuff, that's very self-destructive in my mind, and that's when you lose your soul. All right, guys, I hope it helped a little bit. I'm not totally 100% on thoughts about some of this as well, and I'll be honest with you, so I'm going back and forth a little bit on some of this thinking, but to my mind, that's kind of where my current thought pattern is on some of this stuff. So thank you, CS. Thank you, Level Earth Hanifa. I appreciate that, along with everybody else. Shout outs. And always remember, guys, have a great day. And remember two things. First, every day is a great day to a great warrior. And second, guys, don't forget to